Welcome back, guys. We're going to be talking about dividing with decimals today. So I want you to make sure that you've read the instructions on your Haiku page and that you know what page you should be on in your notebook. And then I'm going to let you pause the video right here and go ahead and copy down your learning target and our title for today. Okay, so now that you've written down your learning target, which is I can divide decimals, and our title, which is dividing with decimals, I'm going to ask you to write down 4 steps. And you're going to see me color code mine because I think sometimes color coding really helps us remember things. So we have 4 steps today. And the first step looks like this. So please write these down as you watch the video. The first step is that you are going to make the divisor a whole number, and it's okay to abbreviate. Make your divisor a whole number by moving the decimal point or the decimal the entire way to the right. We're going to do some examples with these in just a few minutes. So that's step number 1. Feel free to pause the video at any time to write down these steps. Step number 2. So again, you see me color coding mine. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. Step number 2 says move the decimal in the dividend, which you'll remember is the number inside the division symbol, the same number of spaces that you moved in step 1. And in parentheses, I want you to write, you may need extra zeros. Okay? Step number 3. Step number 3 is you move the decimal into the quotient. That's all of step number 3. Again, feel free to pause at any time. And our final step, which is step number 4, is we divide as usual. Okay, so once you have all 4 of those written down, you can pause it, you can rewind it, whatever you need to do. We're going to do an example here so that you see what this looks like. So we're going to start with a pretty easy example, and that example looks like this. And this is different than what we've been working on the last couple of days because we started with long division, and then we moved into dividing whole numbers and decimals. And now you see that our dividend is a decimal and our divisor is a decimal. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to write this as a division problem. So my dividend of 24 hundredths went inside the division symbol, and then my dividend of 6 hundredths went outside my division symbol. Now we're going to follow our step-by-steps. So step 1 was make the divisor a whole number. Well, right now it is not a whole number, and I can make it a whole number by moving that decimal point the entire way to the right. So that means I would go 1, 2 steps, and my new divisor is a 6. There is a decimal at the end of it that you can write if you want to. We don't typically write that decimal at the end of the number, but if it helps you to understand it, then feel free to write it in there. Step number 2, you might remember, was to move the decimal in the dividend the same number of spaces that you moved in step 1. So you'll remember that in step 1 we moved that decimal 2 places. So we're going to have to move this one 2 places. And my new number becomes a 24. Now for this one, I don't have to add any zeros. In a few minutes, we're going to do some where you do have to add zeros. Step number 3 is you move the decimal into the quotient. So we're going to take that decimal from the problem and we're going to put it right there in our quotient answer. And then step number 4 is you divide as usual. So 6 will not go into 2. So you might remember that we talked about holding that place value. That's very important. And 6 will go into 24 4 times. That gives me exactly 24. So that means that my answer for this problem is an answer of 4. And that's a whole number 4. Notice that the decimal is behind it. And so that seems kind of odd because you wouldn't expect for a decimal divided by another decimal to give you a whole number. But if you can follow these 4 steps, you see how this is very similar to just basic division that we've already done. So we're going to do 3 additional examples together at the bottom of your page today. The first example looks like this: 16 3/10 divided by 25 hundredths. So we're going to start by writing that as an appropriate division problem. And it looks like this. We're going to start with step 1, which is we're going to move that decimal in the divisor to make it into a whole number. So my new whole number is, of course, a 25. And then we're going to follow through with step number 2, which is move our decimal in our dividend the same number of places. Now, I can tell you that the most common misconception or the common problem that students make is they only move this one one time because they think, oh, I have to make that one a whole number as well. You have to move it the same number of spaces that you moved this one. So if I moved the divisor 2 places to make it to a whole number, I also have to move the dividend decimal 2 places. And because I have a whole here, I'm going to use one of those imaginary zeros. We call that annexing our zeros so that I can use that to my advantage. So when I rewrite my problem, it looks like this. Now we're going to put our decimal into our answer, and then we're going to divide. So 25 will not go into 1, and 25 will not go into 16. 25 will go into 163 6 times. That gives me exactly 150. 163 minus 150 leaves me with 13. And then I bring this extra 0 into place. And 25 will fit into 130 only 5 times. That gives me 125. So I'm left with 5. Well, we can tell by this problem that this is going to be a number that's going to have a series or at least one number behind the decimal. So now we know that there are some extra zeros back here that we can bring into place. And we say, how many times does 25 go into 50? Well, that goes exactly 2 times. That's a 0. So that means that my answer for this problem is 65.2. Let's move on to example number 2. We have 328 thousandths divided by 4 tenths. So we're going to start by writing this problem. The divisor of 4 tenths goes on the outside, and 328 thousandths goes on the inside. We're going to start with step 1, which is we move this decimal 1 place to make it into a whole number. And then we're going to move on to step 2. Since I moved this one only one place, I'm going to move this one one place as well. Because this 0 no longer means anything to me, I'm just not even going to write it. And instead, I now have a number that looks like this. The 0 goes away, because if I said write 32, you would not write 032. You would just write 32. So we know that because this is a whole number 3, we don't have to have anything in front of it. And now we're going to follow through with our step 3, which is we take our decimal and we put it into our quotient, and then we can begin to divide. So 4 will not go into 3, so I know that there's going to have to be a 0 here. You could put an X and then add a 0 later if you wanted. And then 4 will go into 32 exactly 8 times. So that's a good subtraction, and that gives me 0. And then I drop my 8 into place, and 4 will go into 8 2 times. And there's my 0, so that means I'm finished with this problem. And that means my quotient for this one is 82 hundredths. And then example number 3, this will be our final example for the day, looks like this. 9 5/10 divided by 1500. So this is a little bit different. We haven't had a whole number dividend yet. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write this as a division problem. Then we're going to start with step 1, which is move this decimal until we have a whole number. So my whole number would be 15. Notice that 0 goes away. And then we're going to move this decimal the same number of spaces. So you see I moved it 2, so that means I have to move this one 2. There's my new decimal, and there's a 0 that goes here. So my new number looks like this. We move our decimal into our quotient, and then we begin to divide. 15 will not go into 9. But 15 will go into 95 6 times. That's as close as I can get. That gives me 90. I'm left with 5. Bring down my 0. The closest that I can get to 50 with 15 would be 3 times, because that would give me 45. And then that's going to leave me with a 5. Now I'm going to have to annex some zeros. This is something that we've been talking about. 15 again will go into 50 only 3 times. And that's going to leave me with 5. And then if I annex another 0, I hope that you begin to see the pattern that is developing. Every time I do this, it's going to give me another 3. And then I'm going to subtract a 45. And I'm going to have 5 left. So this is going to be what we called a repeating decimal. So it's going to look something like this. The 3 is going to continue to repeat. And you might remember that we said you write this using something called a bar notation. So it would be 63 decimal 3. And because this 3 behind the decimal is what repeats, we put the bar over the 3. I hope that this helps you understand how to divide decimals and other decimals. Feel free to rewind the video as much as you need to before you move on to the next page in your notebook. Thanks, guys.